Something anyway. So, good morning. Thank you for making it here at 8:30. I did actually complain a lot when I saw they had me on at 8:30 in the morning. It's a bit American to start a conference before 9:30 in my mind, but there you go. First of all, while she's doing that, I'm going to explain a couple of things. T-shirt. Usually I wear a stupid T-shirt. This year I'm wearing a not quite so stupid T-shirt. VMware this year in the UK is raising money for the Prince's Trust. We have our interns taking part in a competition to raise as much money as possible for the Prince's Trust. And to that end, they have designed and are selling T-shirts. Some of you at VMworld may have seen these. They're for sale downstairs. So if you would like a cool T-shirt to wear and impress your friends with, you don't have to tell them that I wore it as well. That's probably a bad thing. Then please go downstairs and pick yourself up a T-shirt. And as I say, all the proceeds go to charity. If you're into cycling, I'm not because I find that this kind of gets a bit lumpy with my sports bra. We have lovely VMware cycling tops as well, apparently. So if you want to go downstairs and do that. Right, that's the shopping channel section of the presentation over. I'll now pick up and reconstruct my clicker. Good to go. So, what the hell is VMware doing? And what I wanted to update you on today is kind of more on the why. Those of you who've seen me do this is my 6th year on this stage, thank God. They invite me back every year. This isn't something default you get as CTO for EMEA at VMware to get on this stage. I get invited back, so I have to be careful every year I don't offend too many people, just Alaric. So, I've been telling a story, and what I want to do is sort of go back a little bit over the last 5 years and update you on some of the stuff that I said 4 or 5 years ago and how we've played that out, and what's happened on that story this year, and then a little bit about what's happening on that story in the next few years. And to that end, that's why I've got Amanda with me today. Amanda is a Director of Technology in our Office of the CTO. Now, a lot of you seem to think that the Office of the CTO at VMware is just a bunch of people with propellers on their heads looking for other things we haven't virtualized yet. It isn't. There's a whole bunch of really amazing, cool research going on. And so what I wanted to do was get Amanda, who is involved in pretty much all of it, to come and tell you some of the cool stuff that we're doing in the Office of the CTO and explain to you some of the amazing projects that are going on, some of the open source stuff and other things. So she'll come up a bit later on in this presentation and update you on that. But let me tell you about what's going on in the industry and set some context for what's actually going on with us right now. So at the moment, we're in buzzword city, as always, but someone's invented another one, and this time it's called digital. So most of my conversations are about digital transformation, or digital business, or digital strategy, or digital anything, and most of us are like, hang on a second, I thought computers were digital anyway. What the hell are you on about? My answer when someone comes and tells me they want to talk about digital strategy or digital business or digital anything is that you're about 3 or 4 years too late, by the way, if you want to talk about this. And a lot of people now seem to think, and some of you may have heard my rant last year about bimodal and the cowboys, etc. I actually managed to get that into the keynote for VMworld this year. It wasn't a rant about bimodal with cowboys, unfortunately. Pat wasn't prepared to do that. He was prepared to talk to this slide, though, which is where people seem to think that it's this dichotomy between traditional business and digital business, and people are trying to have conversations about how you build a new digital business, when in fact it's not that at all. Because right now, as far as we're concerned for the customers we're talking to, all business is digital business. And so actually when someone comes and talks to me about digital strategy or digital transformation or anything like that, the conversation that I want to have with them is not about how you build a new digital side of things. It's actually, I want them to answer the question, what's your strategy in an all-digital world? And I suppose that's really the question I want you guys to ask yourselves and look at your organizations about how they're going to change themselves over the next 3 or 4 years as we enter this all-digital world. And I'll give you some examples of how people are doing that, how people are doing it wrong, and how people are doing it right. At the same time, we see that people's digital transformation or this adoption of this new digital world manifests itself in sort of 4 real, I suppose, business priorities, which then come down to IT imperatives or IT projects. And most of the conversations I'm having with customers fall into these 4 areas. First of all is creating exceptional experiences, which usually ends up being something around mobility. Then it's differentiating with data and apps, which is about modernizing your applications. Then responding instantly to opportunities, which is a long way of saying agile, but we just don't like using the word agile because it's just overused, which is about future-proofing your cloud and making sure that you're building things that actually have some legs on them. and then safeguarding brand and customer trust, which is all about security. And so most of the conversations I'm having with customers are around these 4 things. And what they're trying to do is they're coming to us and saying, how do we do this? How do we do digital? How do we become a modern company? How do we transform what we're doing? And my answer is really simple, and it's 4 words. The answer to how you do digital, to how you transform, how you understand the new world, is my message for today, and that's to start with the user. This is entirely where we've gone wrong in IT, and I've thought about it for a long time. If you think about what we've done, so first of all, the first phase of IT was a bunch of people in white coats in a computer room messing around with a computer, and that was fine because they were the only people who understood a computer. That was basically it. And then we spent the last 30, 40 years, and specifically the last 20 years, doing this thing we called aligning IT with the business. Anyone ever heard that phrase before? Aligning IT with the business. Now, the real problem is that the enterprises that have successfully aligned IT with the business are the ones that have the biggest problem. And it's very simple to explain why. Because when you align your IT with the business, you align your IT with the wrong buyer. And think about it. All of you are going to go home today at some point, back next week or in the next month, and fill in some form of expenses form, probably, based on your trip to the wonderful motorcycle museum in Birmingham. Now, when you do that, you're going to use some kind of expenses system to submit those expenses. Now, to understand how business is aligned to IT, IT is aligned to the business and not to users, ask yourself this simple question as you do that. Is this process designed to make my life as a user easier and more fun? No. Actually, it's designed to make someone in accounting's job easier. Then when you go and fill in your holiday request for next year, is this designed to make my life easier and more fun? No, it's designed to make someone in HR's job easier. Perfect example, at VMware, we use a well-known HR system, and it's very good if you deploy it and implement it properly. If you deploy it and implement it the way that we deploy it, it's absolutely useless. And I will give you the perfect example. I get 28 days of holiday a year because I've been at VMware for so long. And so I get 28 days of holiday a year. So what am I trying to do right now? I'm trying to book out the fact that I'm going on holiday with my kids next year for 2 weeks in the summer. I can't actually book holiday next year yet because it's not available in the system to book because we're not in that financial year. So no one can book any holiday for next year yet, because why would you do that? And then when you get to it, you go in and you log in, and I've got to pick, because if I'm in the first quarter, because I never use all my holiday, and so some of my holiday carries over into the first quarter of the year, which is going to be really confusing as we change our financial year next year. That's going to be brilliant. And so you get there and you're like, okay, fine. So I've now got to pick the holiday that I'm going to allocate from a series of confusingly named pools of days or things, right? And the one is like previously accrued, rolled over, HR terms that I don't understand. And then comes the best bit, is I then don't have to put, I want 5 days off if I want a week. No, I want 5 days of 7.5 hours off. Because obviously, I'm paid by the hour as the CTO of VMware. That's exactly how I'm paid. And at the same time, which is why I talk so long, to be fair. And at the same time, it's obviously the hotels that I book for holiday are also booked by the hour, obviously, so that makes perfect sense. So I stopped booking hotels by the hour when I left the army, by the way. It was a long time ago. So I will go to HR, and I say, I had an uncomfortable conversation with HR, but it wasn't that one, it was another one. And I said, I'm having trouble with your system, I can't use it. It's very difficult to understand. How do I do this? And they said, well, have you done the 45-minute online, intranet-based, computer-based training course? To which my reply was, oh no, I must have missed that when I was busy doing the 45-minute online, computer-based training course for buying stuff on Amazon. Or filling things in on eBay, or telling my friends what happened on Facebook, or anything else that I do every day without any training whatsoever. And that is what's wrong with enterprise IT. And that's what's happened when you align IT with the business and not align IT with the user. Because you get CRM systems that are designed around management reporting, not around salespeople productivity. You get call center systems that are based around logging as opposed to actually making the call with the customer effective and useful and interesting. So how do you start to do a digital transformation? You start with the user. And in fact, the change you're going to see from VMware and a lot of other companies as we go through this change is we're not going to sell to you anymore. We're going to help you sell to your customers. And so you'll hear us talk about the customer's customer. And the change we're going to go through is instead of saying, okay, we're going to sell to you as the IT department, we're going to come and talk to you about how we help you, because we're quite good at selling stuff. You know, we're a software company. We sell $7 billion worth of software every year. So surely we can help you then go and sell the amazing, wonderful new world of IT to your users. And so really that's kind of the challenge we're setting ourselves and our partners and everyone else, is you're going to have to sell to your users. And so we've started this at VMware. We've started a lot of companies. A great example at VMware is AirWatch. So AirWatch is the mobile device management and content delivery system. It's part of the Horizon suite, and it's part of the Horizon workspace. What we did was we rolled out AirWatch internally, and the instruction was everyone must install AirWatch, which didn't really work very well. Because I'm sitting there going, okay, why do I want to install AirWatch? So you're telling me that you want to be installed, it's my phone, by the way, you want to install something called AirWatch on my phone that you've deployed, and you're telling me you're not going to look at what I'm doing, it's for my own good. Yeah, right, whatever. So we had this whole conversation, and people weren't installing AirWatch, and then suddenly IT realized they had to sell it, not push it, because they couldn't push it anymore. So when someone realized actually what happens is if you install AirWatch, you get a certificate installed, and it does integration with your identity. That means you can log onto your applications using Touch ID, but more importantly, when you click on those annoying links that someone sent you that go to an intranet page, they work without you having to fire up a VPN because it's all integrated. Suddenly, everyone installed AirWatch because it made their life better. And that was the secret. We're rolling out Skype for Business at VMware. We're not forcing Skype for Business on anyone. They can keep using WebEx. They can keep using PGI conferencing. But the IT team is determined to deliver an experience in Skype for Business that is better than those two to make people want to switch to it. You're going to have to sell, because that's how other companies work. Imagine it. If we were to try and roll out Facebook as a corporate app, it would kind of go like this. You'd send an email out on a Monday morning to everyone saying, "Dear everyone, please, by Friday, can you send us back an email with a list of all the people that you know? There's going to be an attached spreadsheet where you can list how you know them and your date of birth and other stuff. And if you could also attach photos of everything you've done this week and submit it to the new reporting system on Friday, that would be great." Of course, come Friday, there's only 20% of the nerds that actually respond back and actually fill it all in. The other 80% of the company's like, what the hell, forget it, right? So then what you do is you say, oh, we've got to come up with a better process for this. I know, let's put it in SharePoint, because that's the answer. So you go and build a SharePoint site. And then you go and get everyone to say, well, we've got a brand new intranet site. And then we get people bitching about VPNs and other stuff, and it doesn't work. And then you have to start hiring people that go chasing people down for their Facebook reports. Sound familiar? That's not how Facebook launched. It's not how we work with digital natives. It's not how we work with the customers of today. It's not how we work with the users of today. You have to make them want to use technology. You have to imagine the scenario, drive for the scenario where one of your end users is excitedly showing their mobile device to their colleague, going, look at this really cool app I've got. You've got to install this. It does X, Y, and Z. And to be honest, that's what we have now at VMware internally. We have a few apps internally that are really quite cool, that are pushed out to our devices that help us do stuff in ways that actually improve your life and people want to install them. That's the way to think. So the reason that people are getting successful at this is because they go back to my circle of IT. If you remember this one, those of you who've seen this presentation before. IT literally is about how to go around this loop. You analyze a problem, you deploy an application, the application generates data, you analyze the data, you update the application. That's it. That's what enterprise IT is. That's what all IT is. In the enterprise, we've invented things, as I've said before, like ITIL and Six Sigma to make it as slow and painful as possible, but you still go around the loop. What the difference is that Google's, Facebook's, Amazon's of the world have worked out how to go around this loop faster than anyone else. They've made it their mission to maniacally make everything get out of the way of this loop. The reason why you hear Amazon cited as doing so many updates a second to their website is because they focused so hard on getting stuff out of the way. And so the success for your company in the digital future is, again, how do you get stuff out of the way of this? And a lot of the cool technology that we've heard in the last few years, like scale, big data, microservices, containers, designed for failure, all are byproducts of people trying to get round this circle faster, trying to get things out of the way. How do I get things to go quicker? So how's that manifested itself in infrastructure? Well, it's manifested itself in a way that I've been telling a story on for many years now. And so let me take you back to the start and then we'll go through and get to where we are today and where we're going to go in the future. So from an infrastructure perspective, we started with the first problem, which was how to make one disk look like bigger than it was and more reliable than it was. So instead, you get lots of little disks and make them look like one big disk. And on top of that, you put RAID. And then over time, you rename it as SAN and NAS just to, get more people to buy it, but it's the same concept. It's either a piece of hardware and increasingly some software that sits in front of some cheaper, smaller, who cares disks that are aggregated together to provide a service. It's the first cloud service, really. It's just back those days, we didn't allow marketing people with their crayons anywhere near data centers, so they couldn't see it. So what we did was we built cloud services. It's elastic. Think about it. You can expand the RAID array without having to tell the users above you've expanded the RAID array, hopefully, if you've got the right one. It's designed for failure. Way back in 1987, it was designed for failure. How cool is that? It's not just Netflix that designed that in terms of how to build applications. So what we actually did was we said, OK, well, what's next? What we have to do, and the strategy that we chose at VMware a long, long time ago, and it's the same as we came across in the industry, was how do we build that, but much, much bigger? How do we do it that I can swap the pictures of disks for pictures of data centers, and then I can swap where it says RAID for something we're calling the operating system for data centers? That's when the marketing people saw it and called it SDDC, software-defined data center. That was a challenge we set ourselves. And everyone goes, oh, VMware, you've got the same strategy. Yeah, it's working. It's a pretty good strategy. It's pretty solid. It's what we're doing, and we're building on it and completing it. And I'll tell you what comes next now. Because how we've built this by having a focus on how we make everything work faster. How do we get infrastructure out of the way? So the ultimate goal, if you want this to work, and more importantly, if you want it to work such that a data center can fail and everything carries on, is you have to have it such that an application is independent of everything physical. So to do that, you've got to put everything into software. So first of all, we start off with vMotion. First, we're vMotioning between hosts. That's pretty amazing. Now, 6.x, we're vMotioning transatlantic. Long-distance vMotion. I can now use a moving virtual machine from one data center to another. But of course, then we hit a problem, because you move a data center VM from one data center to another, the network team screen. Right? Because you have to change IP addresses and firewalls and God knows what else, and nothing's going to work. So that's just impossible. Go away. So what do you do if you're in IT and you've got a problem? You put an abstraction layer on top of it and don't tell them. And that's called NSX. And so really what you're doing there is you're saying, OK, well, I'm going to put an overlay on top of my physical network that means that IP addresses stay with that app. As that VM moves around, its IP address stays with it, its security stays with it, everything just knows what's going on. The policy is inherent in the system, it just moves around. It's easy, done. So now the network team don't even need to worry about it, because their IP addresses are completely different to my IP addresses. I'm in my world of this operating system for data centers. But then, of course, I've moved my SQL server from New York to London, and the networking's working fine, but sadly, my SQL server data is still in New York. So what I now need is a distributed file system. That's vSAN. And that's what we're working on now, is how do we get that to do transatlantic, for example. It's metro clustering already, but we've got some very clever people and Lee Dilworth working on how to make it get further than that. So realistically, the challenge we set ourselves, I'd like to think we're pretty much there on in terms of delivering a software-defined data center. But whilst you're doing that, the world doesn't stand still. And we always knew that application types would change. It wouldn't always be virtual machines that are dropping on there. It's not always going to be Exchange that we're running on here, for example. There's new apps and new app types coming along. So actually, the real challenge was, how do we support new applications? So when Docker comes along, the focus was, how do we support Docker as well as we support VMs? In fact, better. And that's vSphere integrated containers. What that does is it provides a layer that sits on top of this operating system that a Docker developer will come along and see a Docker API. We'll be able to spin up these containers, but from an ops perspective, you're still running your operating system. You're still delivering a platform, but a platform for both old and new applications. So don't forget, our hypervisor still supports MS-DOS. And we have customers running MS-DOS in production today. We have a customer running MS-DOS on vCloud Air. I'm not kidding. It's their door badge management system that they just got bored with and they migrated it to the cloud. Cool, right? I probably could have migrated it to my phone, actually, but there you go. So the idea then, and what we're executing on now with our cloud-native apps strategy, is very much this. It's how do we make sure that cloud-native apps are just as good citizens, if not better, directly on our operating systems than anything else. And so what next? What next is what we've always been working towards, is that we swap the pictures of data centers for pictures of clouds. And now I'm looking at an operating system for clouds. Not just for data centers, but for clouds. And that's VMware Cross-Cloud, which we announced this year at VMworld. An operating system for clouds means that I should have the flexibility to put a workload on top of this operating system. And let's wind back to the RAID picture. When you put a file into that RAID array, do you get to choose which disk it goes on? Or do you trust the RAID array based on the policies that you've set and the instructions that you've set to store that information securely and resiliently in a way that you agree with? And that's exactly what we want for this operating system. To get to the point where you're not saying it has to go in this cloud and on that machine in that data center. It's just take my SQL server, take my Docker microservices 12-factor application and run it across the infrastructure that I'm plugging in underneath, which is multiple clouds, and set policy in the operating system such that it knows where to put stuff. So some of it might be it can only stay within the UK, or there must always be 3 copies, or it must have this set level of DR, or it must have whatever. It must be PCI compliant in its storage. Those kind of things will be dealt with by this, but that's exactly what we're aiming for, is this operating system for data centers. So how are we getting there? Well, it takes time because you have to work with partners, you have to work with cloud partners, but eventually you get there. And eventually you get to make amazing announcements to the market that literally are, market changing. And that's what we did. So we start with the SDDC, the on-premise SDDC, which is vSAN, NSX, vSphere, and a thing called SDDC Manager. And I'll talk about that in a sec. Stops at vCenter. You get that up and running, but then you go and ask other people to run the same stack so that you have this operating system that's common across clouds. And luckily now, we have not only people able to run this on-premise, but now you can access exactly the same stack, both in our vCloud Air public cloud, in the vCloud Air network, which is a collection of thousands of partners, people like Atos and Vodafone, et cetera, that are running our stack for their public cloud. People like IBM, who are running our stack there for their public cloud, what used to be called SoftLayer, has now been renamed Bluemix as their public cloud, is running VMware. And now on Amazon. Launching next year, we will be providing the full VMware stack available in Amazon data centers on Amazon. So now what you can do is you can extend and connect your data center to any of these clouds using NSX, and these clouds will appear in your vCenter. And you can freely move workloads around between these clouds. So when I said an operating system for clouds, that's exactly what I meant. One layer you can spread across all of those clouds and freely move workloads in and out. That's what cross-cloud is all about. Now you'll see there it says VMware Cloud Foundation. VMware Cloud Foundation actually is a collection of 4 products that I've already mentioned, together in one bundle that you can buy in multiple different ways. And I'm not going to do a big sales pitch here. But basically it's vSphere, NSX, and vSAN, and a thing called SDDC Manager. SDDC Manager is the one-click lifecycle manager for that entire stack. And you can either go and look at the HCL and build your own stack to run Cloud Foundation on, or you can go and buy pre-configured Cloud Foundation stacks, whether you start off with a VxRail or you move up from there to a full VxRack or other such devices from other people. You can pull this up. And this stops at vCenter. Again, plug it in, carry on. Because actually I feel that what we're seeing with a lot of our customers is they're not actually building IaaS. They're not building an IaaS platform because they don't have people that want to, on demand with a credit card, come and buy internally VMs. What we're seeing actually is people wanting more and better managed hosting that stops at vCenter. And then they're going to build PaaS on top of that for the new generation of applications, but also have that platform run and support things like containers. It's exactly into the sweet spot where we're playing into here. But of course, it's not just those clouds that I mentioned. There's other clouds too. And those other clouds, which is traditional Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCE, Google Cloud, IBM, that's where we bring in the other piece of this. And again, launching next year is cross-cloud services. Now, cross-cloud services is a software as a service that sits on top of all of those clouds and helps you manage all of your deployments in all of those clouds. The demo that we gave at VMworld was, for example, you go in and put your Amazon credentials. It will auto-discover everything you've got in Amazon, draw out the architecture beautifully for you, use our new Arkin technology to map out all the network flows between that. And then using NSX, you could even turn encryption on in Amazon. You could take some of those bits and move them to Azure, which is what we demoed. The AWS piece we're doing here, one of the coolest things that we managed to demo at VMworld, and I love this is based on Amazon's essentially bare metal services. So what happens is, the demo we did is, you want some more hosts. This is exactly what you do. You click in and say, I want some more hosts. How many do you want? This many. It will automatically deploy the physical hosts. It will automatically configure the entire SDDC stack on those hosts, and then using DRS, automatically balance all of your workloads across the new available hosts without you having to do anything. Just, I want to double the number of hosts or add another 3 hosts or whatever. Bang, done. Spread it out, job done. This is the kind of thing we're talking about. This is what an operating system does for you. It gets out of the way. Now, cross-cloud services, as I say, allows you to do that discovery and management, so you can do that management and automation. At the same time, it extends networking security like NSX into AWS, and allows you to do things like data and governance, encryption at rest, and those fun things too. So really, what we're doing is helping you have choice. People ask me, oh, so is vCloud Air dead now? No, it's one of the choices. What's the vCloud Air network going to do now you've announced Amazon? Carry on as they did when there was vCloud Air and all the other vCloud Air network partners, and IBM. It's just more choice. What you've got now is the ability to choose and the ability to move in and out freely of lots of different clouds, which when I talk to CIOs is exactly what they've been asking for a very long time. It makes it simpler for you. End-user computing is where I started with. I talked about starting with the user. The important thing about our end-user computing strategy is that we are focused on, as we say there, consumer simple, and that's not saying the consumers are simple, we're not being rude, and enterprise secure. The mantra in our end-user computing business was always to deliver applications and data securely. You don't have to say to any user and to any device, because that's implied in every statement nowadays. That's just how you do things. It's not how do I secure devices, because that's a very old way of doing things. It's how do I deliver applications and data securely, full stop. How do I make the user experience fantastic? That's exactly what we're focused on. So the vision now is the same picture we've been showing for quite a few years. It's just evolving, it's maturing. And what we're seeing here is the VMware Cloud Foundation is that software-defined data center common layer that goes across the bottom, stops at vCenter. And then on top of that, you could add vRealize Cloud Management for internal and extending to external. And then next year, cross-cloud services will come along and help you from a SaaS perspective manage all of that. On top of that, we're going to make sure we support traditional apps, but also help you build new cloud-native apps and even build and deploy SaaS apps. And don't forget as well that Workspace ONE enables you to collect all of those together and deliver those securely to pretty much anything, including electric cars, you name it. We can deliver these apps, we can deliver this experience. So what next? What are we thinking about now? And as a lead into the next bit where I'm going to bring Amanda on stage, I want to talk to you about some of the things we're thinking about for a couple of minutes. The first thing that is top of mind for me at the moment, and is top of mind for our management BU, and specifically our new CTO for the management BU, Mike Wookie, is AI. There's a term I've invented called intelligent invisible infrastructure. If you follow on the story I've been talking about for many years, the story I've just reminded you of here, of making infrastructure get out of the way, of building that operating system for clouds, I now want to apply AI to that. And because we're in that Goldilocks zone, as I say, where we understand both the app and the infrastructure, we can make more intelligent decisions than you would ever imagine. And so what I'm working on is some really cool and funky stuff that's a bit science fiction-y, but more like, you've seen predictive analytics. So have any of you noticed recently on Amazon, of those who've got Amazon Prime, that some of the stuff you order is actually available for deliver same day between 6 and 10 in the evening? Do you know how they do that? They do that because they know there's lots of people like you in that area that will probably buy that kind of thing, so they pre-ship it to be local to you. It's not in their depot anymore. It's in a much nearer location to you because they know that people buy that kind of stuff in your area. That's freaky, but that's predictive analytics. Now just take that and apply it to data centers. Now that I've got my infrastructure there, now that I've got an operating system where everything's in software, now that workloads and applications can freely move around, what is possible? So could I have it that my infrastructure looks at what's going on in the world? It sees that there is an earthquake happened somewhere, and well, this is reactive, moves my workloads away from the earthquake zone to somewhere else. Or maybe it sees that Manchester United are playing at home on Saturday. And so what we're going to do is they're going to go and contact, if you're, let's just say you're a betting company, what it's going to do is it's going to move your workloads to be as close to Old Trafford as possible. Maybe even working with a telco to be in the cell towers on the x86 servers they've got there, just for 5 or 6 hours whilst the match is on. So your front-end web servers are right next to the audience, and then move them back again without intervention. The possibilities for intelligent, invisible infrastructure are pretty much limitless, but you need to have the stuff there in the first place to make this happen. And you need to have intelligent machine learning, and beyond machine learning to what we call in DNN, which is deep neural networks, that actually can build and run this stuff and make these decisions for you. It started with this stuff's getting so big, there's no way one human being can comprehend or make decisions about it, we need to automate this. But then it moved on to, wow, actually, yeah, that's done, but what can we do with it now? What's the amazing stuff? Now we've got a brain working on this that's way, way faster than any of us. What can it do that we can't do? Very cool stuff we're thinking about there. So that's something you'll see from us in the next 3, 4, 5 years as we start to move into that area. IoT, Amanda's going to talk a bit more about IoT there, so I'm not going to steal her thunder there, but we're doing a lot of stuff in IoT at the moment. We're actually launching an IoT division formally next year around a lot of the work that we've been doing with a lot of customers. So Amanda will talk because that's come straight out of the office of the CTO. Serverless, it's a really cool buzzword. Everyone wants to talk about serverless. It's just a billing engine for PaaS. There's a simple way to put it. So don't get too excited about it. We're keeping an eye on these kind of technologies, but it's that much further up the stack. We're trying to work out how that works with Cloud Foundry and the other pieces that we play with Pivotal and how that all plays together. We've got an eye on it. Unikernels. VMware people know I've been banging on about unikernels for about 4.5 years now. We now have a lot of people in VMware who know what a unikernel is, but we'll get there eventually. We're still looking at these. We're still playing with these. We're still looking at what the possibility is for unikernels. For those of you who want to Google it, have fun, but basically it's a very, very, very small VM. Very small VM that boots incredibly fast. It's like what comes after containers. The use for that is there's a whole bunch of them, really. It could be the operating system that you run in light bulbs. It could be the discrete stuff that you put down into people's houses. It could be what runs in your home hubs. It's a whole different, it's the way you push out new services and applications. It might be the way you package applications in the future. So instead of rolling out an exe, you roll out a unikernel, for example, and that will run on a platform. It's very exciting and interesting. It's what we used to call library OSs. So there's a whole bunch of research going on there. But there's a whole bunch of interesting things happening in our industry. And before I bring Amanda on, there's one conversation I had recently which made me think. So some of you, in fact, all of you, if you're anything like as geeky as I, will be into some level of home automation. And no doubt you've got a variety of now devices in your house. The battle that is on right now in our industry, in the IoT space, is who gets to own the control of your house. So Amazon are pushing out the Echo. You've got Samsung trying to push out their SmartThings technology. You've got Apple trying to do it with the Apple TV as being the Apple TV 4 being their controller. And now you've got people like TV companies pushing set-top boxes out. And I took a TV company to challenge the other day and said, why are you pushing set-top boxes out? We all use apps on our tellies. You know, I've got a Netflix app, I've got a Now TV app, I've got whatever app. Why on earth are you pushing me a set-top box? He says, it's not a set-top box, it's an edge server. Oh, okay, that makes a bit more sense. So there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff going on that, and what we're looking at there is how you maybe apply NSX to that. So that's a really good lead-in now to Amanda. And I'd like to bring Amanda on stage now to talk a little bit more about what the Office of the CTO is doing, and then I'll come back up again and finish off. So, Amanda.
Thanks, Joe. All right, Office of the CTO, or I'll call it Octo from here on out, so we can save a few minutes and get through everything. My name's Amanda Blevins. I've been with VMware almost 7 years. Previously, I started as a sales engineer. And the reason they hired me was because I was such a pain in the ass as a customer. They were tired of me asking questions, so they figured they'd just give me access to all the wikis. Yes, I am from the US, so I like to start all my presentations in EMEA by apologizing. It's just terrifying. Every time I read something on Facebook, I have to close it. Every time I find a news page, I have to close that too. So I don't know what's going to happen, so I just apologize. And also, when I first met Joe, we did the poll before, who's from the north, who's from the south. The first thing I think I remember Joe ever saying is, yeah, you're from the colonies. So I don't know if the rest of the room feels like that, but that's also where I'm from. So what is Octo? What is it about? Joe likes to refer to himself as the chief talking officer, but we do a bit more than that. Evangelizing is important. Otherwise, how would you know what we do? What we find is important to the industry, important to our partners, that sort of thing. But really, we need to look at where the world is going. Inside VMware, we have our various business units that focus on technology that needs to be available today. But in Octo, we focus on the ideas of what might need to be available in the future. And some of them do lend themselves to virtualization, and others are about understanding applications or trends that might or might not sit on clouds directly in the future, have something to do with managing clouds themselves. So there's a lot of invention, and I'll talk to some of those programs and what that looks like. But really, a key thing that we must do to be successful is to listen. So when I started in the field, they brought me over into the office of the CTO because, again, I became a pain in the ass inside VMware and said, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? Why does it look like that? So my job is to bridge our customers in the field and research and development. So if you have any ideas or thoughts or criticism, please come find me. I'll hang out a bit in the solutions exchange and let me know, because what you say can enter into our product roadmap and feature set. So what does this look like from an org structure? We have a lot more in here than just a bunch of talking people or listening people. We have a research office that's full of a bunch of very smart PhDs that do tons of things that I will never understand completely to their level. Global services, I'll talk about that in a bit. We have an open source office at this point. We have a team in charge of understanding what type of compatibility and opportunities we have with Dell. And then sustainability, which is about saving our planet. Other cool stuff that we do, we have an architectural review board. So who has bought one of our suites? Nobody's bought vRealize or vCloud Suite? Do you feel like those products work really well together? Yeah. So where does that start, right? We need to make sure that we look at our product architecture, that we look at how we create our APIs. We look to make sure that our business units are talking to each other to take into account that their products within the same business unit, but also NSX, vServe, vSAN, VROps, et cetera, work together. So vAPIs. Who likes how our APIs work? Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm being very generous. Our APIs are not well documented. They're not necessarily standard across our products, so we also have an initiative to make sure that happens. So with the version that was just released a couple days ago, vSphere, it's the first time that we'll have our new vAPI foundation in there. So it'll all be REST-based. And then we have something called Take Twos and Take Threes. So this is true across all of VMware. If you've been in VMware for a couple of years or a few years, you have the opportunity to join a different group inside VMware and understand how that group works, so you can, better bring that out to our customers, be able to provide insight that folks that live there all the time, don't necessarily see. All right, so specifically, what are we doing? So of those bubbles that were on the previous slide, let's go into a little bit of what each group does. So the global office of the CTO, so the part that I'm in the reporting structure of, Joe ties into, et cetera. Well, one, we fly in a lot of planes, trains, we stay in a lot of hotel rooms. But that's so we can come out, we can talk to you, but also so we can listen. So we can bridge that gap and make sure that the folks that are coding do create solutions that work well for you. We do a lot of work around high-performance computing. In fact, I was just reading that today, or I guess, yes, I don't know. I don't know what time it is anywhere in the world. I barely even know what time to get up. But we recently shipped an ARM version of ESXi to our partners. So ARM is the RISC-based processor. And in high-performance computing, that's very common. So this way, besides x86 workloads, we're looking to, in the future, to be able to virtualize those type of workloads. So high-performance computing, a lot of times, in the US at least, education, for example, like MIT, they will receive a grant from the government, or they'll receive some funding from the school. And they'll say, we need to run these numbers, we need to crunch these statistics, or, I'm a manufacturing company, a processor manufacturing company. I need to make sure that all the data coming in to create this, but also the way it's manufactured, is correct. So that's high-performance computing. And for them to be successful, they generally buy hardware that's specific to HPC, and then they use the heck out of it. Well, they're not gaining all the benefits of that hardware, right? Because if I get my grant for 3 months and I purchase those servers, I'm not going to give that up. I'm still going to be a server hugger. So how do we help those companies be able to leverage those servers in a different way, to be able to share them across groups, and then have all the advantages of virtualization, being able to move those workloads around? But that means that we have to improve our products to reduce latency, to make sure that vSphere performs to almost bare metal native performance, or they're just going to say no. They're going to say that doesn't work for us. So also, we make sure that our business units are creating products that perform well, not just for things like HPC, but also NFV. And we recently created a group specific to NFV. And NFV is network function virtualization. So that means when you pick up your cell phone and you expect to dial a number and it's a send, that's the equipment that you're using. So that's a head-end equipment that connects to the cell tower that goes back to AT&T or Vodafone, or I was in Switzerland and it was called Salt. I was like, that's cool. I wonder if there's a pepper somewhere too. So this is when you make that phone call and all that voice needs to be transferred on hardware. Right now it's physical. But in Joe's world, where Manchester United is playing and they need to push out their web servers out there to x86 stuff, well, it might be beneficial to virtualize all of the voice functions too. So then they can take advantage of network virtualization and better security and be able to move that around the world. So that's where we make sure that our solutions are meeting those performance requirements and adding functionality and working with other partners that have those solutions too. Another thing we're working on is, I think it was actually released, is SAP Landscape Manager connectivity. So that's basically like their automated tool for deployment of SAP environments. And this way we can make sure like vRealize Automation and other products can talk to it and work with it. All right, so innovation. How do we get people to think inside VMware? We have a big event every year that it's a great honor for engineers to attend. About 1,500, I think, is the number, which represents about 10% of our engineers or less, or a little bit more. And basically, it's like VMworld internally. So everybody gets together, super geeky. Again, a lot of stuff that I don't always understand, but these are the folks that are thinking of what do we need to do in our solutions or create another solution in a couple of years. So for example, network DRS, that's something that I saw on radio a few years ago, and now it's coming out in our products. So these folks, they work very hard starting now for radio in April or May next year. We're already submitting papers. And there's a committee that goes through thousands of these papers and selects 3. So it's very, very impressive. And this way, folks get to go around and talk to each other, and they can see, hey, I might be working on this in networking. how does this apply to storage, or what do we do around cloud and management, or desktops over here, and that sort of thing. We have the Fling program. There was actually a quiz question last night, right? I forget how the question was worded, but I don't know, who got that one right? He got it right because he works for VMware, and so I said, oh, it's that network mapping thing, and he's like, SDDC manager, I don't know what it was. But Flings are basically, our engineers look at our solutions, they look at a product that we have, and we look at our support calls. And we say, well, what are people trying to do? Or what are people posting about on the internet complaining and saying, why isn't this easier? So we look at it and say, all right, well, we can't fit it into this product lifecycle. We can't get into the next release, and we aren't sure if it's completely what folks need. So let's create a Fling. So they get together with their product manager, they get together with their manager, and they say, let's do this thing to make life easier. So there's a whole website. It's like flings.vmware.com or something like that. So they create this Fling. They bring it forward to the Fling board, which embarrassingly I'm on, so it's bad that I didn't actually know the name. I'm just like, that network mapping thing. And it needs to be approved by folks across our business units and in the office of the CTO. So if you think that something is hard and it should be easier, check out the Flings. And also you can vote on it. You can provide comments back to the engineer. So that way if you like it and we get a lot of positive, maybe that shows up in app volumes next time or whatever it might be. R&D Customer Connect. Has anybody been a part of this program? Not yet. Okay, so we have the opportunity to bring an engineer on site for you. So say you're running vRealize operations and you like it, of course, right? It's amazing. So you're running vRealize operations, but you're like, wow, I could do this thing. I could do it a little better, or this part needs to be tweaked. Well, we can send a vRealize operations engineer on site with you for us to learn, because they don't often get to interact with customers. They probably don't have any real-world experience. They've never managed IT infrastructure. But this way, we can see exactly how you're using it and help you fix any issues, and then bring that back for future releases to be able to add features to it. Borathon are basically our internal hackathons. Again, a way to spark creativity and see what else we can do with our products. And then I'll talk a bit more about Accelerate in the academic program, and I think Joe's going to talk about the ambassadors in a bit, so I won't touch on that too much. All I know is that there's like chocolate involved, and I got to see a British commercial from forever ago. All right, so the research group. This is a team that reaches out to folks inside VMware and outside VMware to see what do we need to do next. So we have a little, some icons down at the bottom. Well, I do want to say that the research group to date has, funded and pushed forward some of the solutions that are GA today. So for example, vSphere integrated containers, where basically vCenter or an appliance of vCenter acts like Docker and can understand Docker native commands. That started in the research group a couple years ago. That was an Accelerate program. So these are the things that we're looking at now that maybe you'll see as products in a couple years. So first off, blockchain. Who has Bitcoins? Seems like a smart investment. I wish I had some. So Bitcoins are basically this currency that is created through like computer work, like solving a puzzle, basically. And it is a public, basically unsecure, basically unmanaged environment. But you need to make sure that your key pairs match and that sort of thing. Otherwise, you can't just make up money. So there definitely is an algorithm involved to make sure that whoever has this Bitcoin that's worth, I don't know, like $300 US at least, maybe it's 700, I don't know, it's a lot. So per Bitcoin, it keeps going up, it hasn't gone down yet. To make sure that whoever finds one or creates one, it really is a Bitcoin. So what does that mean in the enterprise world? What can we do? Well, financial ledgers, for example. There's so many different banks in the world, different countries within the same country. How can we make sure that those banks internally and across them and across the countries and maybe worldwide can have the same financial ledger? Well, let's have a managed version of Bitcoin. Let's have an environment that uses that same technology that's just as secure, but let's add some enterprise-type controls on it, some financial controls, and see what we can do. So we have a whole team looking at that sort of thing. Corfu. So Corfu is basically a cloud version of a log system. So if you think of a Cassandra that's like a distributed database, well, this is what it is for logs. So today, if you're trying to stretch something across multiple data centers or across the world, and you have a write to a log, or you have a write to a disk or whatever, you have to usually confirm that that write has occurred in both locations before you can continue. So this technology actually gives us a way to write to the log in multiple locations and not have to confirm it before writing again, but provides all the technology behind making sure that still stays consistent, or if it's not necessarily consistent, that that's okay. So this is something that we're working on with the rest of the academic world, but also something that we are building into our products. So for example, NSX. Now that you're going to be able to use NSX in the public cloud, thanks, Joe. Now that you're going to be able to use it, he's showing signs, 5 minutes or so. So I'll talk for another 15, right? Yeah, okay. So now that you're going to be able to use NSX in the public cloud, or now that you're going to be extended to multiple data centers, there's going to be a lot more instances of NSX Manager. So today, NSX Manager is built on Cassandra and Zookeeper. Zookeeper to do that distributed type logging. Well, Zookeeper doesn't scale very well. So we're looking to build Corfu into one of our future releases of NSX to make sure that we can meet these scale requirements for you. Internet of Things. So I ordered Google Home because I'm a Google person, and it sounds like nobody uses Android in the UK, because in the beginning, Simon said, make sure you silence your iPads and iPhones. And I leaned over to Joe, I was like, doesn't anybody use an Android? He's like, no, not really. So I use an Android, so I ordered Google Home. And this will make my, 15th connected device in my house, which is a lot. And I was thinking about it, now that Google's always going to be listening, they're probably already listening already, but now they're going to be able to listen to my dogs. So I'm going to get alerts, like Google Now cards, it's time to feed your dogs, as if my dogs aren't annoying enough, and I'm going to have my phone telling me. But like Joe said, we need to figure out who owns this, but also it creates a lot of data, right? My house creates enough data by itself. But imagine a manufacturing facility that has millions and millions of sensors that make sure that those lines are working properly, or the farmers, or other industrial equipment that's measuring temperature and soil type and all sorts of things, whether you're doing agriculture or mining or something like that. Think about hospitals and all the data that's coming in there. So now you have millions of devices creating millions and millions of values across a minute, seconds, et cetera. How are you going to get all that data somewhere to a public cloud to do any type of analytics? Well, you're not. There's the laws of physics. You just can't do it fast enough. So one of the solutions that we've built is basically a virtualized IoT gateway. So this IoT gateway can run on these edge servers that TVs put out, or some other type of gateway device that an enterprise might buy, and then we can do the intelligence and say, all right, what type of data do we actually need to use based on the analytics that we want to do, and what do we send on, and or let's use some of the solutions that VMware already has and do the analytics on site. So we're looking at building in VR ops, login side, eventually things like Corfu, into this appliance gateway for IoT. And in addition to that, if you guys drink Coca-Cola and you go to those machines and where you can select your flavors and create your own Coke, have you guys seen that? Do you have that here? Yeah. So all of those are managed by our AirWatch solution. So that way Coca-Cola can make sure their machines are functioning properly, also that they're secure. But of course, if they malfunction, it's not our fault. It's definitely on something else. Another thing, Project Harbor. We talk a lot about cloud-native apps and containers and things like that. And we know that it's not very common in the enterprise yet, but it's going to be. You have the developers tinkering with it now. But as it becomes more common, you have the proliferation of these container applications. How are you going to manage them? How are you going to keep track of them? So Project Harbor and something else called Admiral is basically the inventory type service for this, the registration type service for this. So even though I'm from the US and I'm from the colonies and we're based in Palo Alto, we have engineers that are not from the US and work every day in other countries, not just in the field, the sales engineers that you might interact with, but the people that write the code. So the idea is that we want to make sure that our products work for different solutions, different size enterprises, different languages, things like that. So this is just a map of our locations, but we also want to show that we're a diverse company. We're very big into our EPIC values. It's actually EPIC with the C being squared. And that's execution, passion, integrity, customer, and community. And so we try to live that every day in the work that we do. And also it's almost required, would be the word, that you must do customer service and serve the community. So we do this around the world. 2 minutes, so I will finish up a bit more quickly. Only a couple more slides anyway. So global services. Everybody's called, well, hopefully you've never called into GSS, but everybody's probably called into GSS or uploaded a log, just to tell us how well we're doing, right? So that is part of global services, but there's a lot more to it. We need to make sure that in the way when you hire professional services from us to do a more complicated deployment, that all of our professional service engineers do that in the same way. So this team goes through and creates those delivery kits to make sure that that happens. We go to the customers that are doing complex things and work through those architectures with them and make sure that they're deployed properly. That's where education services come in, the classes that you go and take. Or if you, a lot of people don't know this, but if you want to take a class and you look through the 4-day agenda and you're like, I don't need day 1 or 2, I know how to click next. But I really like the configure part of it or the manage part of it. You can come to us and we'll actually create a class based on what you want to do. So we'll take your recommendations. We might combine 2 classes, take out a couple days. We can do it on site for you. We can do it somewhere off-site, but still just for your company. So there are a lot of options there. And of course, there is GSS. But I put the inner circle thing up in orange. Hopefully that's orange. Who's part of inner circle? Nice. We got like 20. So everybody can be part of Inner Circle. It's a cool club. Cool kids join. But this means that you can give feedback directly to us. You can interact with your peers. We'll ask you a couple surveys, like a couple questions every week. But this is another way that you can actively give us feedback to help us improve our products, improve our roadmap. And then we have our open source office. So, who thinks of open source when you think of VMware? Yeah, no one. Oh, of course Joe does, with my 1-minute sign. 1 minute. I'm going to open source my time and borrow from somebody else. So we recently hired somebody named Dirk, and basically he spent 20 years at Intel. And our CEO, Pat, we used to work at Intel, so apparently they're friends. And when he started Intel 20 years ago, they were also not affiliated in any way with open source. And so in VMware, we've not been very altruistic when it comes to open source. We're great with grabbing code and using it, but we have not done a good job of contributing or taking in others' contributions to our code. So it's his job to improve that. He's been there 2 or 3 months now, and so some of the things that he's working on is making sure we have a consistent open source policy inside, that everybody's aware and has the ability to be able to contribute to open source outside, and then to really think of VMware synonymous with open source. So all these things that we've been talking about, Vic, Photon, Harbor, I don't know, I can't name them all right now because I have negative 5 seconds left, but those are all available up on GitHub. And these are things that you'll see where we will want your contributions in the future as we figure out how that works. And the last one, sustainability. We have a VP in charge of sustainability who has a PhD, I guess in sustainability. I didn't even know it was a thing, but it is. And so she knows all the facts about exactly when the world will end. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And at VMware, we've already done a lot to be able to help our planet. So as a company, we want to make sure we're fully sustainable. We cancel out all the carbon emissions from our travel, things like that, that we plant enough trees and recycle enough things and that sort of thing. But also we want to help all of our customers do that. So because of the Paris Agreement, a lot of companies need to show back what they're doing to the world. So we did the math, or we had IDC do the math, and basically one server, so running like 17 old servers on one physical server, those 17 VMs, is basically canceling out or reducing the amount of CO2 as one, I assume, unleaded car driven 9,000 miles or 9 barrels of oil. So we have really, really helped the world from here on out. And we're continuing to improve our products through things like DRM or the more of the power management services or higher performance and vSphere, and exploring what vSAN and NSX can do from here on out in the future. So that's my presentation. Just a few minutes over, Joe's going to wrap it up. Here's my contact info, or you can find me here because I'd love to hear back from you what you're doing and what you like and what you don't like.
Thank you. Okay, so what next? Well, what next for you is a break. Ultimately, I'd like to thank you at this point for watching this warm-up session for Julian Wood. I've been a warm-up act for many people in my life, but to be honest, I feel I've finally made it. I'm a warm-up act for Julian Wood. So please come back and watch his one at the end of the day. CTO ambassadors were mentioned. We have thousands of pre-sales people around the world. The top 120 of those globally get nominated by their peers. Some of them try and nominate themselves. Doesn't work. They then get voted and selected, and they then get picked as the ambassadors. They're extensions of the Office of the CTO. They are the direct connection with the Office of the CTO. So they are walking around wearing these T-shirts. You'll see them. They are down on a table on the mezzanine. I've provided them with a large amount of Ferrero Rocher as ambassadors to hand out to people who ask decent questions. So at the same time, at 10 o'clock at the end of this break that we're overrunning into now, the table 4, which is going to be the CTO ambassador table, is there all day. So go and ask them stupid questions about anything to do with R&D, anything you want to know about VMware. It's our top techies. Next to that table at 10 o'clock, I'll be sitting at that table with Amanda for you to come and ask us questions about anything, really. It's kind of like a surgery. Ask the CTO any stupid question you like. We've done it every year. It's quite good fun. But as we go away from this presentation, I want you to ask yourselves a couple of questions rather than coming and asking us the ambassadors questions. One, how are you going to cope in this hybrid world? This is the hybrid world we all live in now. It's a mix of on-premises and off-premises, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. Everything you deploy will be a mix of these. So you need to be the masters of hybrid. You need to be the masters of building hybrid solutions and hybrid applications for your users. People always say, oh, no, I'm using Office 365. I'm fully in the cloud, right? Off-premises SaaS. No, you're not. How do you print? That's not done in the cloud, is it? Or I use Salesforce.com. That's fully in the cloud, isn't it? Yeah, great. What's the first thing you do to a Salesforce.com project? Link it back to your on-premises Oracle Financials. Hybrid app. Everything's hybrid. Work out how you do that. Second, I say this every time, and I'll keep saying it. How do you get around this loop quicker? You get infrastructure out of the way. What you should be working on here is how you get infrastructure out of the way, because that will allow you to start with the user. And I'd like you to leave you with start with the user. So thank you very much. As I said, enjoy the break now, and the session starts again at 10 o'clock, but it's downstairs now. You can get there quicker.